guys, it's Tori and Victober is finally here. So I've been excited for Victober since literally the end of July when I read The Trumpet Major by Thomas Hardy and absolutely loved it and really just wanted to get into Victorian literature. I actually started watching a ton of old Victober videos and finding a bunch of new channels, so that was really fun, but it's finally arrived and I can finally indulge myself. Also, look at this beautiful shirt that I got for this year's Victober. I think Kate, one of the hosts, Kate Howe, somewhere on her channel has a link or on her Instagram page, but I will link her channel and the rest of the hosts down below. I guess before I continue, if you don't know what Victober is, it's essentially a month-long readathon wherein participants are encouraged to read Victorian literature, so anything written in the UK or Ireland between the years of 1837 to 1901 or during the reign of Queen Victoria. There are 3 hosts involved in this wonderful readathon, so I will link all 3 of their announcement videos down below. So first of all, we have Lucy from Lucy the Reader, Kate from Kate Howe, as I mentioned, and then Katie's from Books and Things, and they have set up a great set of challenges this year. Anyway, let's just get right into my TBR. So I have a lot of books to talk about because what's a Victober TBR unless you put more books on it than you can read. But anyway, what I'm going to do, how I'm going to organize this is I'm going to start with the 4 reading challenges. And then I'm going to mention 3 other novels that I really want to prioritize. And then I'm going to mention 4 novels that are shorter that I may be able to squeeze in towards the end of the month, or if my mood changes and I find myself more in the mood for one of these rather than one of the ones I previously prioritized, then I can pick one of those up. But anyway, let's get started. So the first challenge comes from Katie from Books and Things, and she challenged us to read a novel that comes from your favorite contemporary genre. So for example, I read a lot of fantasy and historical fiction, so I ended up going with historical fiction and decided to pick the group read, which is Shirley by Charlotte Brontë. I have only ever read Jane Eyre by Charlotte Brontë, so this will be a nice second try with her. I liked Jane Eyre a lot, but I didn't like it quite as much as I liked like Wuthering Heights and Anne Bronte's books. So I'm hoping to start to gain more of an affection for Charlotte Brontë than I currently have. I did already start this because first of all, I just couldn't help myself. I was just too excited. I couldn't even focus on other books because I just wanted to read Victorian literature. So also, sorry about the shine, it's probably gonna be a problem throughout the video. Anyway, what this is about is it follows a man named Robert Moore who is a mill owner, and he's starting to invest in some different machinery to help more effectively produce, I think he produces cloth. Many of the workmen in town have a lot of issues with this because a lot of them are losing jobs because of this new machinery, and so they start rioting against him. It's kind of dangerous. And then we also follow his cousin Caroline, who I believe he has a romantic interest in, and her friend Shirley and their interactions and relationships. I don't really know how all these different things connect and interweave, but I'm sure it will be done in a very brilliant way. I trust the Brontes in general, so I believe Charlotte has the ability to really pull this all together. Personally, right now, I'm about 100 pages in, and for about 60 pages of that, I was very bored, tempted to even DNF, which I never do just because I'm one that I see a lot of hope in a book. Like, I'm very curious to see how the whole story ends up going. So usually I don't DNF. If I ever DNF, it's because I'm really struggling. But it's reached a point where I think I'm going to start being more interested in it. I'm starting to understand who all the characters were. I felt like at the beginning they just threw a ton of characters at me, and it was hard to distinguish between all of them. So I think I'm starting to get more of a handle on that, and hopefully we'll enjoy the rest of this. I know Lucy from Lucy the Reader, this is her favorite novel of all time, so I hope I enjoy it, but I also have heard some mixed things from other people, so we'll see. The next challenge comes from Kate Howe, and she challenged us to read something by our favorite author that's new to us, so either a short story or a novel preferably. And my favorite author of all time is Thomas Hardy, so I definitely couldn't go with anyone else. I mean, I could have gone for Anne Brontë, but I've already read both of her novels. So decided to go with Thomas Hardy. However, I really wanted to challenge myself this Victober to read more new to me authors, as I've read a lot of Hardy and not much of very many other authors. So because of that, I chose something a little shorter by Hardy in order to cover this challenge but not take up too much time. So I'm going to read a short story from the Wessex Tales by Thomas Hardy, or just Wessex Tales, I guess. There's about 7 different short story novella type things in here, so I will at least read one, maybe more. It's not a very long book overall, so maybe I'll find time to read all of them, but we'll see. I don't really know. I really want to prioritize the other things on this list, so as long as I read at least one in here, I will count it for that. However, I did also just barely get this wonderful complete collection of Thomas Hardy's poems, and it's freaking ginormous. But I don't usually read very much poetry. I'm not a huge poetry fan, but I have read a few of Hardy's and I do enjoy them, so I'd like to read a lot more. I think I'm going to take some time to read at least a few out of here. Again, not a ton, but between these two things we'll cover Kate's challenge. Next, I'm going to discuss Lucy the Reader's challenge, and she challenged us to read a collection of letters or a diary from the Victorian era. And again, because I have 5 novels I really want to prioritize, I'm going to choose something a little shorter. She did mention she was okay with, that makes it sound so like intense and formal, which it's not, but she said that it was acceptable for the challenge to read at least just a few letters, even if you don't read a full collection. So I downloaded from Project Gutenberg a collection of letters by Queen Victoria herself, so I'm really excited to read through those. Again, not sure how many. Maybe there will be a day in one of my vlogs that I read the Hardy stuff and read those letters just to get through those challenges, but we'll see. And the last challenge was a Reader's Choice challenge, and for that they ended up going with the suggestion to read a book that has been on a previous Victober's TBR or a book that's been on your TBR for a very long time. And for that, last year I had this on my TBR, and that is The Odd Woman by George Gissing. Again, like I mentioned earlier in this video, I really want to try new authors, so this is going to be a part of the fulfillment of that goal. So anyway, this follows the odd women of London, so women in London who don't have a pair, don't have a husband, and just basically how they live their lives at a time when there weren't many opportunities for women. And I'm very, very excited to read this. I've heard great things. I've heard George Gissing compared to Thomas Hardy, which already a win, obviously, for me. Okay, sorry if the angle changed a little bit. I was adjusting some things. But anyway, The Odd Women, I am really excited to read. I'm actually going to buddy read this with some roommates from last year. I recently moved to a new university, so I wasn't able to room with them this year. However, we're still in touch, and I asked them if they wanted to do another buddy read with me, as last year we read Wuthering Heights together, so I was like, let's do another one, because it was so much fun. So we ended up picking this one, and I'm hoping I really, really like it. Also, it's exactly 31 chapters, so we literally just have to read a chapter a day to get through it by the end of the month, which is kind of fun and very convenient. Okay, so that is it on the reading challenges. There is a 5th challenge, which is simply to read while wearing something Victorian-esque. Really have no idea what I'm gonna go for that. I don't know if I'm going to go out of my way and buy something new if I want to do that, or if I'm just gonna figure something out with what I have. I haven't really put too much thought into it, but I do have a sweatshirt that says Acton, Ellis, and Currer Bell, so the Brontë sisters' pseudonyms. Maybe I'll just wear that if I can't think of anything else, but I would like to try to wear something a little more looking Victorian, so we'll see. Anyway, moving on to the books that are still priority reads that don't match the challenges. First of all, for Victober, I really like to read, or listen to, I mean, a longer Victorian classic. And so this year I decided to go with The Way We Live Now by Anthony Trollope. I'm so excited to listen to this. I know literally nothing about it, but Anthony Trollope is an author that I really have a lot of interest in, and I've heard this is a great place to start with him. So I'm going to, and hopefully I'll enjoy it. Next, another Victorian author I've been dying to try is Elizabeth Gaskell, and the book I chose by her to read this year is Ruth. So I've heard a lot of people say that North and South is a good place to start with Elizabeth Gaskell. However, I'm just not super intrigued by the synopsis for North and South. I don't think I won't like it. I'm just not super curious by the premise of it, if that makes sense. However, Ruth really intrigues me. So even though I may end up liking North and South better, which I wouldn't be surprised based on what people have said about them both, I still think this will just pull me in, and then hopefully I'll be able to get into a lot more of Elizabeth Gaskell's works. But this follows a fallen woman, and it's been compared to Tess of the D'Urbervilles by Thomas Hardy, which is my favorite Victorian novel. So I really, really hope I enjoy it. I'm very interested to see my feelings about it compared to Tess. So we'll see how that one goes, and I'm so excited to get into Elizabeth Gaskell. I have high hopes for her. And the last book on this priority list is a book by an author I have read stuff by before. However, I still don't really know how I feel about him, and I think I just haven't chosen his more well-loved works yet. And even this one that I'm planning to read, I don't think is one of his more well-loved works either, but I just really want to give it a try, and it's one of his shorter works, so I feel like I can squeeze it in for Victober, and that is A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. I am really looking forward to reading this. I've heard a lot of controversial things about this, just different opinions, and I'm just very curious to see how I'll feel about it. I know that it takes place during the French Revolution in both London and Paris, but other than that, I know nothing. So definitely going into this very blind, and I'm hoping I enjoy it more than some people do, but I'm not expecting it to be a new favorite. It could be, who knows, you never know. Okay, and last but certainly not least, we're going to get into 4 novels that are shorter, so I may be able to either squeeze them in towards the end of the month, or I'll be able to possibly read them earlier in the month if my mood ends up being so that I want to pick one of these up, if that makes sense. So let's go through them. I know I mentioned earlier that I really didn't want to read any Hardy novels this month just because I want to focus on new authors. However, I can't just not put one of his novels on this list at all. So we're going to read The Well-Beloved by Thomas Hardy if I have time. This is one of his least loved, I'd want to say, works. I have heard the worst things about this, but I want to read all his novels. I have 5 left, including this one, and I really don't want to end on this one, so we're going to get it out of the way this year, I think, and hopefully enjoy it more than other people seem to, but we'll see. I'm kind of going into it with very neutral feelings. I'm not expecting to love it, but I'm also not turning away from the idea of loving it at all, if that makes sense. Like, it's still a Hardy novel, so I'm like, maybe I'll enjoy it better than other people do, but maybe I'll hate it as much as some other people do. So we'll just see, and it's one of his shorter works, so it should be a pretty quick read whenever I get to it. I'd love to read this before the end of the year, actually, even if I don't read it in Victober, but we'll see what happens with that. The last 3 of these are all new to me authors. So the first is George Eliot, and I have Silas Marner by George Eliot here. I have heard mixed things about this, mixed things about George Eliot in general, and I feel like she's one that if I can get past her writing style, if I can get into it, I will really love her stories, but there's a chance that her writing style will not work for me and therefore will provide a big roadblock for me from loving her books. But we'll see. This follows a man who is not very social, kind of a grump, and he ends up coming home one day to find a little girl there, and so he ends up raising her, and it talks a lot about the town's reaction to this and stuff like that. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Les Mis. I'm sure it's very different from that, but it has a similar premise to it. So very curious to see how I feel about it. I hope I like it. I really do. But I hope I like every book I read pretty much. So anyway, we'll see how it goes, but hopefully it will end up being good whenever I read it, even if it's not in Victober. Next, if I end up in the mood for something more of a mystery, I have A Study in Scarlet and The Sign of the Four, both by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. This is a bind-up of those first 2 novels in the Sherlock Holmes series, and I really, really want to read this series so bad. I just got these beautiful editions last year for Christmas and absolutely wanted to get into them as soon as possible, and then I still haven't. So maybe this Victober I'll be able to, but we'll see what happens. Again, there's a lot of books on this list, so this is kind of very much lower priority, but if for whatever reason I end up in the mood for more of a mystery, I have this to read from. And last, I have a book that I have such high expectations for whenever I get to it. However, it's like my most recent purchase, and so I feel like I should focus on books that I've owned for a while before I read this. But anyway, the book is The Half-Sisters by Geraldine and Jewsbury, and it just hits all the points, man. If you don't know, which I don't think a lot of you do because I don't know how much I've mentioned this, I love the fallen woman trope a lot, especially in Victorian literature. Hi guys, Editing Tori here. So upon further research, I really did not describe this book very well, so I'm going to do it in a better way here. So basically, The Half-Sisters is about a pair of half-sisters who one is legitimate and one is illegitimate. They come from the same father, different mothers, and the legitimate one is raised in this middle-class, good, proper setting and kind of lives her life in a way that aligns with the way she was raised, and then the illegitimate daughter ends up becoming an actress and kind of lives a lifestyle based on her childhood. So sounds super interesting, and I'm really hoping I end up liking it whenever I read it. Hopefully we can get to it soon, even if it's not in Victober. I have no idea when I'll get to this, but I want to read it so bad. So anyway, we'll see what happens, I guess. And that is it. I'm not going to lift the stack because I did for the beginning of this video when I was doing the thumbnail and it was already pain. So we're not going to do that again. But anyway, thanks so much for watching. Let me know down below what you are excited to read for Victober. Also, if you've read any of these and your thoughts on them, as I would love to know. And I will see you next time. Bye!